Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did, so let's get started. Number 5 was Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, making $4.1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $173 million and a worldwide total of $444 million. Another spectacular weekend for the film as it puts its domestic total just $2 million away from the entire domestic run of The Boss Baby, as well as $4 million away from the entire domestic run of Home, which is fantastic. Obviously, it has already surpassed Home worldwide a while ago, but it has ways to go from surpassing The Boss Baby worldwide. But otherwise, this movie is still doing very well. $450 million worldwide is definitely in the bag, as well as $180 million domestically, which would put it $10 million away from the entire domestic run of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. We'll see if it can get there, and it looks like it's going to continue holding well, as, believe it or not folks, there are still 2 months away from the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is the only other, as far as I know, widely released animated film coming out around this time. So yeah, once again, Puss in Boots, a long time for this movie to continue to grow and exceed expectations, which in all honesty it already has. Probably the only downside to this movie's run right now is the fact that since we're about to enter March, competition is going to be fierce. Maybe not for this movie, but there's just a whole lot of much more movies coming out, and I think that'll probably make this movie leave the top 5 very soon. So this may be one of, if not the last time we see it in the box office top 5, but this is such a historically impressive run. My goodness, what a fantastic run after it was blasted by a historically cold winter storm that made it seem like this movie was dead on arrival. The film was able to exceed all expectations with strong word of mouth and incredibly strong legs. It has just done so well for itself, and I'm very happy that it did as well as it did, as the movie is fantastic. So yeah, good on you, Puss in Boots. You defied all expectations and you became one of the biggest hits of last year. Great job. Number 4 was Avatar: The Way of Water, making $4.8 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $665 million and a worldwide total of $2.2 billion. Much like Puss in Boots, this is another solid weekend for the film. It continues to be the biggest movie of the year worldwide and continues to grow domestically. Again, don't think it's going to get to the Top Gun domestic total, but again, it doesn't really need to since it's already surpassed the Top Gun worldwide total. And like Puss in Boots, this is another film that I do feel like will be out of the top 5 very soon, given the huge stack of movies on the horizon and where it's at currently at the top 5. But still, again, another very solid run at the box office for Avatar. Again, lots of people, similarly to Puss in Boots, a lot of comparisons between the two now that I think about it. People saw it as a disappointment. It's not going to do that well, but against all odds, thanks to word of mouth and strong legs, the film was able to pivot over those naysayers and become the biggest hit of the year worldwide. And even the fact that it got so close to Top Gun's numbers and even the first film's numbers domestically and worldwide is quite impressive. I'm sure even the most dominant supporter of this movie was not expecting it to do this well, but yet here we are. So yeah, not much more else to say here, just Avatar continuing to do very well. It may be out of the top 5 soon, but it's still a humongous success. Number 3 was Jesus Revolution, opening with $15 million domestically this weekend, and that total stays the same worldwide as it hasn't been released in any international countries as of yet. So if you remember last week's episode, I didn't have really big expectations for this movie going into the box office. I just didn't see any sort of buzz or marketing for it to prompt me to give it any sort of high expectations that it would do well. Well, I was clearly wrong, because clearly there were other people who saw tons of advertising and were interested in it enough to give it a pretty successful weekend, as the film costed $15 million to make, and well, would you know, it made that entire budget back. So this is definitely already on the best start possible, and given the positive word of mouth and reception it's been getting from audiences, it received the coveted A+ cinema score. I think we're going to see a much more impressive and bigger box office result for this movie than we were expecting to. So yeah, overall a very impressive strong start for Jesus Revolution. Let's see how much more this can grow. We'll see how and where the audience positive reception and word of mouth takes it, but yeah, off to a very solid start. Number 2 was Cocaine Bear, opening with $23 million this weekend domestically and $28 million worldwide. Another big surprise at the box office this weekend, as this movie exceeded a lot of people's expectations. There were a lot of lower expectations. Many people thought the premise was just too weird and absurd for the general audience and thought it wasn't really going to affect the box office all that much, but not me. Despite my hesitations with it that I explained last weekend, I still thought this movie had a shot of exceeding expectations. I thought the buzz was strong enough. I thought the marketing was good enough to warrant a decent opening weekend, and sure enough, this was a much better than decent opening weekend. Thanks to the budget of being around $30 to $35 million, it's pretty much made a majority of that back, and it's certainly gonna make all of that back by the end of this week. This is also the third biggest opening weekend of the year so far, topping Jesus Revolution and Knock at the Cabin, but sitting behind Megan and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Very solid start once again. Again, given the incredibly strong marketing and the very solid buzz, it just really helped this movie overcome the lowering expectations, and the fact that the premise and the title, even the poster, were just so ridiculous and so absurd. It really piqued a lot of people's interest. Like, you're telling me you're not even the slightest bit interested in a movie called Cocaine Bear? It will be interesting to see if this movie can perform like Violent Night and have much better than expected holds as well. It did get a B- cinema score, which in all honesty I was expecting. I mean, there was no way this movie was getting anything higher than a B+ at most, honestly, given how the type of humor this movie is going for. But yeah, it is lower than Violent Night's B+ cinema score, so we'll see if this movie can benefit from that. I'm hearing audiences like it better than critics, though. The audience reception seems to be a bit better, though. Reviews are pretty mixed, so this is definitely going to be something we're going to have to keep our eyes out on. Hopefully it continues to exceed expectations. But as for the start off, as for the opening, this is a very promising start. Let's see where it can go from here. But yeah, a very solid weekend for Cocaine Bear. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, which was, for the second weekend in a row, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, making $31 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $167 million and a worldwide total of $362 million. So yes, the film was able to maintain the number 1 spot, despite, all honesty, much bigger and stiffer than expected competition, and in the grand scheme of things, compared to other movies, it is the biggest movie of the year by a wide margin. Domestically, at the very least, worldwide is at number 3. But the fact of the matter is, folks, this was not a good weekend for this movie. It had a catastrophic second weekend drop off, as it barely escaped the dreaded 70% drop-off. It had an exact drop-off of 69.9%. That is now the new biggest second weekend drop-off in the history of the MCU, topping the 67% or 68%, I apologize, percent drop-off from Black Widow, which, keep in mind, that was released at a time where theaters were just starting to get back into the groove. Not as many people were going to the movies, and it was released on a hybrid method where it was released in theaters simultaneously the same day. It went on Disney Plus for $30. So at the very least, you could say Black Widow had an excuse. This is just bad. This is bad. And again, it surpassed its $200 million budget, yes, and it's probably going to double that worldwide very soon, yes, but this is not the best look, as this was probably the only weekend this movie could have shown its strength at the box office, because again, its only two big competitors this weekend were Jesus Revolution and Cocaine Bear, and the fact that those movies got relatively close to this film's total, like these were definitely bigger numbers than what people were expecting, shows that not only people were interested in a lot of other movies, which is very nice to see, but also how lackluster the word of mouth is on this film. Word of mouth is not doing this movie any favors, and given how stacked and competitive March is looking, I mean, for crying out loud, we're starting March this week, and the competition for this week is looking to be pretty fierce, so it'll be interesting to see how Ant-Man faces off all that. But yeah, this is not good. We'll see how this movie can muster up this loss, but I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty lackluster run for Quantumania. I don't want to say it's going to be bad, because again, it's already surpassed its budget and it's going to double that very soon, but yeah, this is a pretty disappointing weekend for the film. We'll see where it goes from here, but yeah, this is not good. And those were the top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we have 2 new wide releases, believe it or not, the first being Operation Fortune. This is the newest film from Guy Ritchie that was originally supposed to come out last year, but due to circumstances that I am unaware of at the moment, was completely taken off the release schedule and then picked up by Lionsgate and will now release in theaters, which, hey, I'm at the very least happy the film is now seeing the light of day. It's gonna finally be released to the public. The downside is, however, I don't have the biggest expectations, because in all honesty, I think they got the word out that the movie's coming out a bit too late. The latest trailer for this dropped a couple weeks ago, and I don't think that was nearly enough time, again, to get the word out. The marketing, while not terrible, I've seen promotion for it, hasn't been the best, and the buzz isn't as strong as I think they would hope for either. So yeah, I'm not going in with very high expectations for this film, unfortunately. Hopefully it exceeds expectations, maybe it can pull off what Jesus Revolution did, but I have my doubts. Then the other big new film hitting theaters this weekend is Creed 3, the third installment of the Rocky spin-off film franchise Creed, as well as being the directorial debut of Michael B. Jordan, nonetheless. Now, I'm expecting this movie to have a much bigger box office than Operation Fortune, as well as a pretty solid debut. Creed has always had a pretty substantial and decent box office run with the first and the second film, and this looks to be no different. The marketing has been fantastic, the buzz is really strong, and reviews are really fantastic. Critics are really liking this movie, and with how Ant-Man the Wasp did so poorly this weekend, I see no reason why this movie does not have a shot at the #1 opening weekend. Don't think it's gonna top its first weekend to be the biggest opening of the year by any means, but this is definitely going to be a much bigger opening than I think many people will expect. So yeah, very high expectations. I think we're going to see some very solid numbers for this movie, but we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied? Unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.